The Black Dahlia case is one of the most chilling and perplexing unsolved murders in American history. On January 15, 1947, the body of Elizabeth Short, a young woman with dreams of Hollywood stardom, was found brutally mutilated in a vacant lot in Los Angeles. Her body was severed in half and posed in a way that suggested not just violence, but a deliberate act of psychological manipulation. Despite countless investigations, leads, and theories, her killer was never caught, leaving the city and the world haunted by an unsolved mystery that has endured for over 70 years. Forensic psychology provides a unique lens through which we can attempt to understand the killer's motives and behavior. It's not just about solving the crime, but about understanding the twisted mind behind it. Forensic psychologists use psychological principles and criminal profiling to uncover the patterns in behavior that drive people to commit heinous acts. In cases like the Black Dahlia, profiling can offer invaluable insights into the mind of a killer, helping investigators predict future behaviors and narrowing down potential suspects. It's a tool that blends science with human behavior to piece together the dark motivations behind a brutal crime. The Black Dahlia case reveals a killer who was far from a maniac acting on impulse. Instead, he was methodical, composed, and driven by a deeply calculated plan. His crime was not one of spur-of-the-moment violence, but a premeditated act, demonstrating a chilling level of psychological control. Every element of the murder, the careful positioning of Elizabeth Short's body, the lack of blood, and the meticulous staging, suggests a killer who was in control of his emotions and actions, not a man overcome by passion or rage. This wasn't a crime born of anger. It was an orchestrated act designed to send a message and instill fear. The killer's ability to compartmentalize his actions is another striking aspect of his psychological makeup. He was able to separate his violent acts from his daily life, suggesting a significant psychological division between the persona he presented to society and his hidden dark side. This compartmentalization allowed him to maintain a seemingly normal existence, all while carrying out acts of calculated brutality. Such a psychological split is common in psychopaths who can mask their true nature behind a calm, composed exterior. Moreover, the killer's need for psychological control is evident not only in how he manipulated the victim, but in how he toyed with the investigation. By carefully leaving behind clues that would mislead and confuse investigators, he demonstrated an overwhelming desire for dominance, a sadistic pleasure derived from controlling the narrative, the investigation, and even the minds of those trying to solve the crime. This was a killer who thrived on manipulation, both in the real world and in his carefully crafted crime scene. The misleading letters sent to newspapers, claiming responsibility for the crime, were not just taunts. They were a part of his psychological manipulation. These cryptic messages confused and enraged the authorities, distracting them from the real leads. His need to control the investigation became clear as the case dragged on. As forensic experts worked tirelessly, they were constantly dealing with false leads, misdirections, and dead ends. This created an intense feeling of helplessness among investigators, leaving them frustrated and unsure of how to proceed. The killer's psychological control over the narrative ensured that the investigation remained trapped in a cycle of confusion, making it even harder for the authorities to make headway. The killer's desire for control extended beyond the crime scene into how the murder was perceived by the public. The cryptic letters he sent to newspapers were not just designed to taunt the police. They were aimed at the wider community. The killer's psychological profile reveals that his actions went beyond mere murder. They were motivated by a deep sadistic pleasure. While many killers act out of rage, jealousy, or revenge, this killer's motives were rooted in psychological control and manipulation. His crime was not a spontaneous act, but a carefully orchestrated spectacle designed to instill terror. By placing Elizabeth Short's body in a highly visible location and making it impossible to ignore, he ensured that the crime would receive maximum attention. But it wasn't just about the attention. It was about the fear and confusion that would ripple through the authorities and the public. The killer derived pleasure from the chaos he created. Every time the police failed to make a breakthrough, every time the public grew more frightened, the killer's need for dominance was satisfied. His sadistic pleasure was tied to the emotional impact his crime had on everyone involved. He wasn't merely killing. He was psychologically torturing those trying to understand his motives. He wanted to create an environment where fear ruled, where every step taken by the authorities was met with another layer of confusion and manipulation. This wasn't just murder. It was an act of psychological warfare that aimed to disturb, control, and terrify. His true nature was carefully hidden behind a mask of normalcy, which allowed him to move about without drawing any attention to himself. This ability to live two completely separate lives suggests a deep psychological control over his behavior and emotions, allowing him to compartmentalize his criminal actions from his public persona. The Black Dahlia case reveals how a killer can operate under the radar, even in a city as bustling as Los Angeles, simply because no one would ever suspect him of being capable of such monstrous actions. Forensic psychologists would argue that the killer's ability to blend in with the public was no accident. His actions weren't impulsive or fueled by rage. They were strategic and methodical, reflecting someone who had a deep understanding of human behavior. The killer's ability to mask his true self and interact with others daily, maintaining a seemingly normal persona, speaks volumes about his psychological makeup. He likely knew how to read people, how to behave in social settings, and how to hide his darkness behind the outward appearance of an ordinary man. This is a hallmark of individuals with psychopathic tendencies, people who can manipulate others and mask their true intentions while keeping up a facade of charm and composure. Forensic psychologists would point to this ability as an indicator of the killer's intelligence and emotional detachment, as it takes a specific kind of mental discipline to live undetected in society while simultaneously committing heinous acts behind closed doors. The Black Dahlia case had a profound impact on the public psyche. The brutal murder, coupled with the mysterious circumstances surrounding Elizabeth Short's death, left the city of Los Angeles, and ultimately the entire nation, gripped by fear and paranoia. What made this case so terrifying wasn't just the violent nature of the crime, but the unsettling feeling that the killer could be anyone. His ability to remain hidden, coupled with the cryptic letters he sent to the media, only amplified the public's sense of danger. As the investigation stalled and no leads emerged, the uncertainty about the killer's identity created a pervasive sense of dread. People in Los Angeles began to feel unsafe, as though anyone could be the next victim. The fear was not just about the crime itself, but the knowledge that this killer was living among them, watching and manipulating the investigation. The media played a central role in amplifying this fear. Headlines screamed about the brutality of the crime, and the mysterious letters only stoked the flames of paranoia. The killer seemed to be actively fueling the public's anxiety, manipulating not only the investigation, but also the general population's mindset. The killer's psychological manipulation of the media was perhaps the most disturbing aspect of his strategy. By sending cryptic letters to local newspapers, he turned the press into an extension of his game, using it to play with the minds of both the public and the investigators. These letters weren't just confessions. They were carefully crafted psychological tools designed to mislead and confuse. They allowed him to remain at the center of the story, constantly in the public's eye, without ever revealing his true identity. Each letter was a taunt, a deliberate attempt to manipulate the way the public perceived the crime. Forensic psychologists would argue that the killer's manipulation of the media shows a deep understanding of human behavior. He knew that by keeping the mystery alive through sensational headlines, he could keep people invested and afraid. The media coverage became a psychological weapon in his hands, allowing him to stay elusive while shaping the narrative of the crime. Each letter he sent was a new move in his psychological game, taunting the police and creating fear and confusion in the minds of the public. He wasn't just committing murder. He was psychologically manipulating everyone involved, making it a game where he controlled the rules. The public reaction to the case was a reflection of this manipulation. People didn't just fear the crime itself, but the uncertainty and the constant reminders that the killer was watching and playing with their minds. The fear wasn't just about the murder. It was about the unknown, about the idea that the killer could be hiding in plain sight, using the media to play out his psychological battle. Despite decades of forensic psychology and psychological profiling efforts, the Black Dahlia case remains an enduring enigma. The psychological profile of the killer has led investigators to numerous theories and insights, but ultimately, it has only raised more questions than answers. The case is one of the most mysterious in true crime history, as the killer's motives, identity, and psychological makeup continue to elude even the most seasoned experts. This question is at the heart of the mystery. Forensic psychologists have pondered why the killer specifically targeted Elizabeth Short, a young woman with dreams of Hollywood stardom. Was it her vulnerability, her ambition, or was it something darker, something about her psychological profile that made her the perfect victim? Some believe she represented an ideal target for a killer looking for someone easily manipulated or someone whose public persona could be twisted into a symbol of control. But the why remains elusive, with no clear answer to explain why she was singled out for such a brutal, high-profile crime. The psychological motives behind the crime also remain uncertain. Forensic psychologists agree that the killer's actions were deliberate and calculated, suggesting that his goal was not simply murder, but something more psychologically complex. Was he trying to send a message? Was he seeking power, domination, or revenge? The fact that he took such pains to stage the crime scene, manipulate the investigation, and taunt the public with his cryptic letters suggests he was after something deeper than just the act of killing. But what exactly he hoped to achieve, whether it was a sense of control, the satisfaction of psychological manipulation, or the thrill of a public spectacle, remains one of the case's greatest mysteries. The Black Dahlia case serves as a haunting reminder that evil can hide in plain sight. The killer's ability to blend into society, lead a double life, and manipulate everyone involved in the investigation shows how dangerous it is to underestimate the depths of human depravity. The case teaches us that some of the most dangerous individuals can appear perfectly normal, even charming, to those around them. Psychological profiling allows us to recognize these patterns, helping law enforcement identify potential suspects and prevent future tragedies. It also emphasizes the importance of vigilance and awareness. We must be mindful of the signs and behaviors that could indicate someone is operating outside the norms of society. The Black Dahlia case underscores the need for ongoing education in understanding psychological patterns, both in criminology and in everyday life. By learning more about the psychology behind criminal behavior, we can be better equipped to recognize the subtle signs of danger and, ultimately, protect ourselves and our communities from those who operate in the shadows. If you found this chilling, drop your thought in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights into the darkest corners of human behavior. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new video.